Hello and welcome back to War Tech Talk, Eastern Circle's podcast on military technology, innovation, its battlefield application in Ukraine, and geopolitical impact. I'm Anastasiya Shapochkina, president of Eastern Circle's think tank in Paris, and I'm joined today on the show by Rodolphe Oberlé, Secretary General of Eastern Circles. And Rodolphe, can you introduce yourself?
Hello, I'm a former active reserve military officer of the French Army and later operation officer in Ukraine for the OSCE between 2014 to 2020. I was familiar with the basics of electronic warfare throughout my military career, and I observed how the technology was deployed and developed in Ukraine since Russia first invaded in 2014.
Thank you for joining us, Rodolphe. This episode stems from an article by Rodolphe, which we'll publish on our website, www.easterncircles.com. Today, we are driving into the evolving field of electronic warfare and how it has become critical in the war when Russia invaded Ukraine. It's a story of history, technology, and innovation. So let's get started. To understand electronic warfare, we need to start all the way back in 1904.
Some people trace the creation of electronic warfare to earlier date, yet all the way back to the Boer War that started at the end of the 19th century. But most probably the Russian claim to have used electronic warfare for the first time during the Japanese War, which they lost in 1904-1905. Vice Admiral Urtomsky of the Russian Pacific Fleet managed to disrupt Japanese artillery radio communications, taking control over their radio channel. Those initial experiments paved the way for the complex system we have today.
Well, after the collapse of the Soviet Union, both Russia and Ukraine inherited a range of electronic warfare assets. They roughly had the same number and range of EW, an acronym for electronic warfare. But Ukraine faced more challenges in modernizing these systems. At first, its closed-loop production model made it possible to modernize and develop new technologies. But in 2014, when Russia invaded the east of Ukraine and captured key production facilities like Topaz plant in Donetsk, Ukraine was set back on the technology.
But necessity drove innovation. Ukraine's defense industry, including companies like Ukrbetstechnika, Tritel, Proximus, started developing new systems such as the Bukovel AD and Polonaise. Meanwhile, Russia expanded its capabilities with systems like Krasukha 4, Zhitel, Moskva 1. Today, Russian expertise in electronic warfare is superior to that of the West. The comparison with Ukraine is more difficult as both armies compete in innovation with reverse engineering on a daily basis. The first 2.5 years since the full-scale invasion have been consumed by competition in electronic warfare tactics, techniques, procedures, and has numerous electronic warfare systems deployed at the front. But in the last year, defense tech innovation has shifted towards a departure from EW realm, altogether with the development of drones on fiber optic thread, undetectable and thus unreachable by electronic warfare because these are not emitting any radio signal.
If we try to compare Russian and Ukrainian approach to the electronic warfare, Russia's approach was more centralized, incorporating electronic warfare as a distinct branch of its army. They've invested heavily in the field, doubling production of electromagnetic jamming systems as recently as 2023. The advancements of the Palantin and Belina systems are an example of this effort.
Yes. That's a stark contrast to Ukraine, which kept electronic warfare units within its support forces, therefore not a separate branch, like we explained. But as we'll unpack in this episode, Ukraine's adaptive strategies and reliance on smaller, decentralized innovations have reshaped the battlefield.
Electronic warfare operates across three levels: strategic, operational, and tactical. Let's break this down for our listeners.
It's important to look at how the three play out on the battlefield. Strategic systems like Russia's Murmansk BN can disrupt communication far away, 500 kilometers away. They are often used for large-scale suppression of enemy command and control networks. Operational systems like the Polye 21 have ranges up to 50 kilometers and focus on jamming navigation signals like GPS. And they have been quite successful recently against HIMARS.
On a strategic level, tactical systems that are often portable target specific threats like drones. These systems include Ukraine's Bukovel AD and Russia's Volnarias. Tactical systems are vital on the front lines, where controlling the immediate electromagnetic environment can mean the difference between life and death.
Ukraine, lacking large-scale electronic warfare units, focuses on flexibility. Their mobile electronic warfare groups use systems like Bukovel, Polonaise, Prometei, MF5. This decentralized approach aligns with their broader military doctrine of rapid adaptation and innovation.
In contrast, Russia's doctrine emphasizes hierarchical structures. Electronic warfare brigades operate at the strategic level, while battalions and companies provide operational and tactical support. This cascade system ensures a consistent presence across the electromagnetic spectrum.
However, this structure also has its weaknesses. The larger, more centralized systems are vulnerable to targeted strikes. Early during the full-scale invasion, valuable strategic systems have been hit or lost by the Russians.
Electronic warfare is also one of the rapidly evolving innovative technologies shaping the field today. One term that's gained attention recently is окопный рыб, or trench electronic warfare. Rodolphe, can you explain this phenomenon?
French electronic warfare represents grassroots innovation on Ukraine's battlefield. The Ukrainian forces made a better use of drones initially, forcing the Russian frontline units to improvise portable systems that counter these immediate threats like drones. As Russians followed in drone warfare, Ukrainian companies have produced tools like anti-drone rifles and the Parasol 1, Parasol 2 systems. And these efforts complemented larger scale systems. The Ukrainian Brave One Innovation Development Cluster, started by the Ministry of Digital Transformation, has been fostering collaboration between the military and the private sector. A standout innovation from this initiative is the Piranha AVD 360, designed to suppress drone control channels effectively. Meanwhile, Russia has adjusted its doctrine to emphasize smaller, portable systems like the Sanya, Capuchon, or even small Polye 21M, which can be rapidly deployed near the front lines. This shift reflects lessons learned from the vulnerabilities of high-emission systems like the Krasucha series.
It's a high stakes game of adaptation. The battlefield evolves quickly, and both sides are learning to balance power and flexibility in their electronic warfare strategies.
Let's take a closer look at the equipment used by both sides and how Ukraine's arsenal compares to Russia's.
Ukraine's systems, such as the Bukovel AD and Prometei MF5, emphasize mobility and rapid deployment. They are designed to counter drones and provide localized electronic support. New systems like Griselda and Tornado 4 show how private companies are driving innovation, often filling gaps left by government procurement.
Russia, on the other hand, fields a wider range of systems. from the strategic Murmansk BN to the tactical Sanya. Their reliance on AI-enhanced systems demonstrates their focus on integrating advanced technologies into their electronic warfare doctrine. They use the AI system Bulena, for example, to put targets in categories and prioritize them. But Russia's centralized approach can be a double-edged sword. While Russian systems are bigger and more far-range, they are often less adaptable than Ukraine's decentralized innovations.
And this difference in approach highlights a broader theme: the tension between centralized power and decentralized adaptability in modern warfare, reminiscent of the fundamental differences in Russia's versus Ukrainian political regimes. Beyond technology, there is a human element of electronic warfare. Both sides face challenges in training specialists and integrating new systems into their forces. Ukraine, in particular, has invested in training centers and partnerships with civilian manufacturers to overcome these obstacles.
When we look at the future trends, the role of AI, machine learning, and quantum computing in electronic warfare is growing. These technologies could revolutionize how battles are fought. The next decade will likely see even greater integration of advanced tech, making the field more complex and challenging than ever before.
How does artificial intelligence impact the applications of electronic warfare?
Like we said, the battlefield in Ukraine now is the most dense, we could almost say, totally saturated environment. Therefore, a human operator behind an electronic reconnaissance machine can no longer, cope with the amount of information. There are so many things emitting, transmitting. Here we do not only speak about, portable radio, large HQ communication, uh, missile, drone, UAV signals, etc., etc. So therefore, between these hundreds and thousands of different signals, the priority must be set. And there is nothing better than artificial intelligence, to categorize the signals and to put that on top, as the first target.
Hmm. What I'm struggling to understand when we talk to people who are fighting, right? And and then we listen to all of these numerous reports from the front lines. Either it is by mill bloggers, right, on the Russian side, or by the Ukrainian mass media, or by Western reporters. It seems to me that we're coming to we have these two separate, very distinct pictures of the war. And one picture describes this mass assaults, like meat grinder, thousands of people or hundreds of people thrown into the assaults, especially on the Russian side. You have Russians, you had North Koreans at some point, right? 10,000 was the number which was aired. And then at the same time, on the other hand, you have, let's say, drone pilots describing a totally different vision of the battlefield, which is closer to what you are describing, in the sense that the whole territory is entirely controlled. There are thousands of drones, a lot of EW systems, and everything is visible. So the humans who get into that war environment, the soldiers are trying their best to remain invisible in the hidden underground, preferably, and for as much as possible. And even at night, their movement can be tracked with the thermal devices and thermal cameras. And only when it's like the dusk, periods in the very early morning, very late, the onset of the evening, or the fog, then it can be a bit safer to go out. But actually, that the field from this other kind of perspective is kind of empty, because everybody's who's human is hiding because of this dominance of the drones. How do you reconcile these two pictures? How is this possible that these two realities exist in the same physical space? And which reality is winning?
Right now, both sides have learned the lessons. There are no such, meat wave, hundreds, thousands of infantry soldiers marching, advancing towards enemy positions. That's a myth.
But from what we
Um,
have seen, like for example, the North Korean assaults, right? The war, there are videos, right? Definitely not hundred thousands, but you have still people like advancing and physically, right, on the field, and then we had this like the North Korea experience was what last year, so it was just a few months ago, and we saw this. There were videos of this. They are sending, maybe 40 people, maybe 30 people, and then they are, as they are gone down, the next 30 people wave is being sent. So in a sense that it's not the same scale, right? But it's the same method, no? It's still kind of we have seen relatively recently.
yeah, no, exactly. You rightfully mentioned the figures of 30, 40. That's the maximum amount of infantry assault. Usually, when the environment is very dense in terms of enemy drone operators or possibility of artillery hit, the both sides, the Ukrainian and the Russians, they employ usually very small infantry groups of 4, 5, 6 people when the environment is risky and dense. When it's less risky, or if the troops are lacking experience, which might be the case of these Northern Koreans, the group can be bigger, 30, 40, let's say several dozens. But that's only exceptional cases. But where the expression of meat waves and meat grinder could be true is that these small or medium scale assaults are repeated over the days constantly in order to storm one position. In that sense, we could speak of meat waves.
For me, it's the question about these conflicting methodologies. Why are we still having the people on the battlefield overall if everybody's so visible? If it is impossible, so to say, to bring a tank and just put it in the middle of the field, it's going to be immediately targeted, even when it's camouflaged. Big equipment is targeted easily. How it seems that with the radio electronic warfare and the drones which are able to survive in that environment, the role of humans is changing on the battlefield. How do you see that impacting the course of the war, how it's going, the ability to defend as well as attack, and how does it then change the future war? Are we gonna then, what is the next step? Is it like humanoids?
Currently, breakthroughs can only be achieved under exceptional circumstances. And these exceptional circumstances can be, for example, technological. If one side suddenly introduces an innovation, like, for example, fiber optic drones, or introducing a new electronic warfare device that can give temporary an edge, or like you mentioned also meteorological exceptional circumstances like thick fog, or at dusk, or even tactical exceptional circumstances like the trick played with inserting assault troops through a pipeline. It's only through these very rare, exceptional circumstances that big advances, breakthrough can be achieved in the current conflict.
I would like to also talk about the production capacity of radio electronic warfare equipment. we mentioned that this is kind of Russian strength traditionally, because the Russians would just centralize and have more resources financially, but also can centralize production, make it on a more massive scale, versus Ukrainian approach to have many companies producing different types of products. Which approach in terms of radio electronic warfare do you assess to be more successful so far? If we take out of the equation this difference of having big equipment versus smaller equipment, but just talk about the number of equipment. I don't know if that's even a possible comparison. And which do you assess more successful? Because if you have a centralized approach of producing many things of the same type, so you then tend to reduce the number of types of products. And then if the products are within this innovative category, right, then you risk overproducing something which is outdated and doesn't perform. While the other side, can the other side then use this to its, like Ukraine, use this to its competitive advantage by having, okay, they have different production centers, they are smaller, each of them is smaller, they produce different stuff, but then in theory, they can be more flexible, innovate faster, and thus be more responsive. Who gets the advantage? Which approach gives the actual advantage on the battlefield?
It's very difficult to say because electronic warfare is rarely discussed. In that war, it's the most secretive domain, with maybe the development of missiles, special drones, and underwater drones. But reading sometimes the Russian military bloggers, I detect that recently Ukraine has put the Russians in a difficult situation. So I think with these guys recognizing the difficulties the Ukrainian electronic warfare poses sometimes to the Russians, the flexible, grassroots approach of Ukraine, especially if breakthroughs are achieved through artificial intelligence, that might be the right way to conduct electronic warfare.
A question about supplies to the front lines. So one thing we're now talking about more hypothetical, right? We're saying, what is their capacity? What is their strategy? How they're using this and this. But how about the supplies themselves? What is your assessment of today? We hear from both sides, right? The complaints that either people have been undersupplied in equipment, and EW is often cited as that core crucial equipment which helps people basically become invisible for enemy drones, or remain visible if that equipment is not available. And that's what we're hearing that often is a problem. What is your assessment of the actual situation in terms of supplies?
Ukrainian civil society is as it is for the supply of drones. It is more structured, more reactive, more efficient to push all these devices to the frontline units. Here again, certain things are transpiring through the Russian military bloggers. The frontline troops are often on certain sectors lacking that trench electronic warfare equipment. So much so that even Russian military bloggers have to resort to donation of their readers to supply particular units with these trench warfare electronic devices. So here again, Ukrainian approach is better.
I would also like to just come back to what you were saying about the presence versus absence of large radio electronic equipment. What difference does it make? Can you compare the effect that having a large radio electronic equipment can bring to somebody on the front line versus having just a whole bunch of small radio electronic equipment? What advantage does it bring, and what not having it means?
Yes, these very large pieces of equipment, like the Murmansk BN or the Krasukha 2, Krasukha 4, can allow Russia to disrupt satellite communication, to mess up with long-range reconnaissance drones above the Black Sea, or to disrupt GPS signal in neighboring countries, in Poland or deep into the Baltic Sea. Ukraine does not have that capacity. So that's maybe at the moment it's not so crucial, but if the conflicts would spread over neighboring countries, the Russians here might have again an advantage in disrupting um, the armed forces of a country that does not have yet that experience the Ukrainians have.
And the final question I would ask is about actually the impact of radio electronic equipment on human health. You have radiation emissions, certain type of radiation, which can be detrimental to the health of people. And obviously, if we are thinking about how to lower, minimize those health impacts, especially from the producer perspective, what could be the things that people could do, is if there is anything to minimize those health impacts?
Yeah, at the moment there's nothing to do about it, and the most dangerous equipment are these portable trench electronic warfare equipment. Typically, these rucksacks with 4, 5, 6 antennas protruding. And usually, when you have a assault squad moving towards an enemy position, you always have one infantry soldier carrying that, in order to provide a sort of electronic warfare bubble around the assault squad. That equipment is extremely damageable to the health, so much so that the operating procedures of the equipment says that you should only activate it when you have clear evidence that FPV drone is around, because that sends such harmful radiation that it can literally cause damages to the brain within a few days. But here again, like you mentioned, facing a FPV drone, which usually achieves a success rate of 50%, which means death of the assault squad, and using that harmful portable electronic warfare device, there is a choice the frontline soldier makes instantly. As we wrap up, it's clear that electronic warfare is more than a battle of machines. It's a battle of brains behind the design of devices. Ukraine's resourcefulness and Russia's industrial power represent two distinct approaches to this evolving field.
As technology continues to evolve, so too will the strategies and systems we've discussed today. Rodolphe, thank you for joining us on War Tech Talk and sharing your experience.
Thank you, Anastasia.
This episode was produced by Anastasiya Shapochkina and Elitsa Gadeva. Expert research by Rodolphe Oberlé with assistance of Darina Marina Batyuk. Their article on electronic warfare will be published on Eastern Circle's website at www.easterncircles.com.